Welcome to another session of the Fragments Silicon Reviews. Been a bit of time, as noted by the backlog we have to get through today. We got 4 games up this week because, we had things to do last weekend, and it's been Thanksgiving. So, first up is Call of Cthulhu, or Call of Cthulhu the video game, or Call of Cthulhu the official video game, depending on where you're reading this.
Still not as good as Peter Jackson, King Kong, the movie, the game, or whatever the hell.
The movie, the novelization, the game. It's Call of Cthulhu, the video game that doesn't have any other subtitle.
Right. That's the actual difference here, because this has not been the first Call of Cthulhu game by any stretch of the imagination.
Nope.
Probably the previously most notable Call of Cthulhu game was Dark Corners of the Earth by Bethesda. That was done about a decade ago or so.
I was about to say, when was this?
Like 2002 or something like that?
And not that long ago, but I think like 2006. Apparently it was 2008. Oh, no, 2005. So, yeah, that was a long time ago. And as far as what this game is, it touts itself as a survival horror role-playing game, which
it's
makes
based on the role-playing game pen and paper one, sort of, but
yeah, well, it's based off of the mechanics. That is to say, it has things like the sanity meter. It's got stats in various places that you. It's got like occultism, for example. Now, the stat system is kind of interesting because you can't it operates as a typical role-playing element thing for the most part, except for 2 stats, and that's medicine and occultism. You actually cannot put points in those. You actually have to explore the environment and find books or other arcana in order to up those stats.
That kind of makes sense. It's hard to come up with medicine off the top of your head, and occultism is sort of by its nature hidden knowledge.
Right.
Are you able to put negative points in literacy, because that was a power strategy in some versions of the pen and paper game?
No, in fact, in general, you're starting out pretty much with average stats in your regular stats, for lack of a better term here. It's like, you'll have average conversational skills. You'll have average spotting hidden objects is actually a skill in this game.
Right.
And so on and so forth. It's like, I think my weakest stat was psychology, and even that was like at 30%.
Now, like the spotting hidden objects thing, can you still kind of brute force it if you know what you're doing, or is it one of those you have to meet the check?
Well, here's the thing. The problem is these stats really don't matter.
Something, whose line is it anyway joke?
Well, it's more. It faces the problem of
if the player's perception is good enough, sometimes you can find stuff without the character having good perception.
Well, it's more you have to progress. So, say if you don't have the dexterity skills to, in this game it's called investigation. Dexterity is under that for reasons. But it's like if you can't pick a lock, and it's important to moving forward, then you have to go another route. So
because you don't have a living game master who can change the game around what happens to the players.
Right. So that's one problem here. It's like, you're going to be versed well enough in one skill where you'll move forward regardless. So, that's just a transposition of the role-playing game that couldn't make it. Would never make it, because they're not going to have you unable to open the move forward in some fashion. Other problems is, well, there are no branching paths here. I think Yahtzee mentioned this, but it's like certain stats open certain conversational pieces, but while they'll give you more background, maybe once again, they're you're heading down the same path regardless of what you do.
There is ultimately only one particular cosmic horror being summoned that you're going to lose your sanity and die horribly against.
Well, and here's the thing. This isn't, like, you're not really dealing with Cthulhu here. Like, you're dealing with a couple of Lovecraftian nightmares, but not really Cthulhu. Like, you're dealing with the Leviathan and the Shambler. Like,
neither one of those seem like particularly huge names, so...
well, it's like Leviathan, doesn't that literally mean huge or something? Or am I thinking of Behemoth?
I'm not talking... No, it does, but I'm not talking about in terms of, like, physical size. I'm talking about in terms of, like, stature.
Yeah, well, when you say Lovecraft, your immediate instinction
you're not actually going directly... Like, you're not dealing with Nyarlathotep or, like, agents of Azathoth or any of those things.
Well, here's the bigger problem. This is a video game. So there is an inherent problem to doing authentic Lovecraftian horror.
Spoilers, it's kind of boring.
Well, yeah, it's also because this is a visual medium. It's like...
The more visual the medium, the harder it is to actually, like, meaningfully depict things that are supposed to be damaging to the character's sanity because the player can see them too.
Right.
And just throwing this out there, but there's a reason that video games that damage the player's sanity is a creepypasta thing.
Right. And in terms of Call of Cthulhu here, well, it's like it doesn't just define the horrors. It's like you gotta play the indie horror game shuffle with, like, the Shambler. It's probably one of the most infamous parts of the game now. It's like I think Jim Sterling talked about it.
Yeah.
It's like, the Shambler will actually come out of a painting and try to hunt you down. And it plays out like Outlast, Amnesia, any indie horror game you can name. It's right down to the fucking lockers. Now, I will credit this game for actually doing something different with the lockers. Staying in the lockers will actually affect your sanity meter. Like, your character, Edward Pierce, apparently suffers from claustrophobia, because when he's in the lockers, I'm like, technically they're not lockers, but they're fucking lockers. Like, he'll actually start he suffers from claustrophobia. So the game will go all fish-eyed and he'll start getting panicky. And yeah, that will affect your sanity meter. But here's the here's another thing about Call of Cthulhu and Cthulhu mythos. You're going to go fucking insane.
Oh yeah, Call of Cthulhu the tabletop. If your characters don't end up either horribly dead or, just very far away from wherever the game started and suppressing the last several months,
right.
You're playing it wrong. Apparently, Leviathan is one of Cthulhu's children, so
Yeah. Once again, this game isn't actually based off of any one Lovecraftian story. It's not like Conarium, where that was actually a sequel to Into the Mountains of Madness. No, this is more generalized, which kind of makes sense because I think that's the way the pen and paper game played out as well.
Is the Shambler is this gray thing with twisty skin and kind of walks hunched over? Yeah, Dimensional Shambler. It's just a monster. It's not even. It's like there are lots of them. It's just you're dealing with one of them.
Yeah. Once again, to the characters in this game, they don't.
Oh no, it's absolutely horrifying. It's just you're not. Like, in terms of game set in the...
I know. You're not actually dealing with an actual old one here, is what I'm getting at. Which is kind of odd, since the game is called Call of Cthulhu. Like, you'd expect Cthulhu to at least make a cameo.
Yeah, Cthulhu is kind of hard to deal with because of the specifics of his location.
Not that there's ever stopped video game adaptations before.
Right.
Indeed.
Like,
but still, you'd expect like a named. It just seems to me like they picked some fairly generic things for this rather than having like an interesting subplot. Yeah. Then again, my preference for Lovecraft stuff swings highly towards the weird, interesting life forms things as opposed to the it's just scary and fucks with your head stuff.
Yeah. Well, welcome to one of the central issues of this game. Because I'm going to get to the God's honest truth here. This is just an installment of Amnesia that has a few more gameplay layers to it and a bigger budget. Like, swear to God, it's not too different from playing one of the Amnesia games or Outlast or any indie horror game in the last decade. It's got the mechanics. I guess technically you do get a gun in this game, but I didn't get this far. Okay, so the biggest problem with this game, at least from my end, was the PC version is very buggy, very unstable. With semi-frequent regularity, it would crash. It would just crash. And I know I'm not the only one who's had a problem with this. I'm like, so word of warning there, you might want to spring for like the PlayStation 4 version. Apparently, like even the console versions are somewhat unstable, but they're more stable than the PC version.
Well, I imagine they probably don't take as long to get back into.
Probably, but it's like, this mainly being about exploration and evasion, it's fine. Like, the actual gunplay is some of the ropiest shit in this production.
Now, are you just a regular dude with it? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, also remember, in a Call of Cthulhu thing, if it's anything, if it's even approaching being right at the thing, if it's a problem that can be solved by a gun, it's not the problem you need to be worried about.
No, it's like, now this is in keeping with the Call of Cthulhu game. Like, you're really only using guns or weapons or fighting on cultists. In fact, that's kind of why cultists exists, just so some kind of actual combat can be executed. Now, I also know to Call of Cthulhu's Eternal Regret, they actually gave stats to, like, the Elder Gods and shit. I mean, they're so ridiculously high, you'll never be able to do anything. But, okay, the thing with...
If you amp yourself up high enough, you might actually be able to beat the Shambler or something.
Well, it's like, there's a pretty simple expression in RPG circles. If you stat it, they will try to kill it.
Yes, this is why Pathfinder does not give stats to actual gods.
Yes. So, yeah.
Kind of beats the whole thing with Cthulhu itself and all the other old ones. They're not supposed to be beatable.
Yeah, you can write strong immortality clauses and shit into their things to cover things like, I mean, you can hit it with a boat and it'll go to sleep for a while, but...
Yeah, it's like, if you actually are dealing with an old one, you're done. That's kind of how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
It's like revolvers are for killing the fleshy humans who are, wanting to destroy the world.
Yeah, the best thing you could do with a gun is maybe if there's someone trying to summon something, you might be able to kill them before they get around to it.
Now, as far as the actual story that's being told here, it's serviceable Lovecraft stuff, but I do agree with Yahtzee. It's pretty incoherent and fairly rushed. Like, yeah, you do jump ahead some, and it feels like there's some pages missing. And yeah, the character you're playing, Edward Pierce, he's you know, he he's he's a fairly typical Lovecraftian protagonist, I'd say. He's a detective who has a drinking problem and suffers from PTSD.
Oh, so I thought you were gonna say an educated white man from New England.
Well, he's also guess what? He is also that as well, because guess where this takes place?
Oh no, Lovecraft was it's in New England.
Yeah, it was always in New England.
Yeah, it's like
he's kind of like Stephen King. Good God.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like the setting is 1924 Boston area, and the actual place you explore is a place called Darkwater. Like, no,
a couple of coves down from Innsmouth.
Probably. I'm like, and there's a lot of whaling culture there, and because it's the 20s, Prohibition.
Yeah, Lovecraft hated ocean things like the smell of water. I mean, he hated a lot of things, like actually most things.
Yeah, and some stuff we really don't want to get into on air.
Apparently, if it didn't involve his hometown, he hated it, apparently.
Yeah. Lovecraft was, I think, Providence, Rhode Island or something.
Yeah, he also hated black people and, well, really anyone who wasn't very white.
Air conditioning, math.
Oh, God.
I'm like, it's safe to say that the actual Lovecraft was a piece of shit, even by the standards of the time.
Well, it's not even that he is a piece of shit, but that's the relevant part of it is that he was an incredibly frail and sensitive person, and that's why everything was terrifying to him.
Indeed.
I think it's also sheltered.
One of his horror stories is literally about air conditioning.
And people thought Poe had problems.
Anyway, now as far as the production values go, this is cutting a. It's definitely got more money invested in it than an indie horror game. This is something.
Do you know what engine it runs on?
Unreal Engine 4.
Because one of the things that has come to my mind recently about this stuff is that actually using a highly developed graphics and physics engine and stuff could actually take away from your ability to capture some of the stuff. Like, a lot of the stuff could potentially be handled as weird, like the Hound of Tindalos is a predatory dog monster that literally can teleport through corners, which is exactly like a graphical glitch.
I'm not sure I can speak to that. So, but anyway, this is what we would call modern day A to double A video gaming. It's also, well, if you've ever heard the term Eurojank, it's also that, hence my complaining about all of the crashes. So it's unfortunate, but it is there. The audio, well, the voice acting is, not terrible, but you can tell the voice direction and what wasn't done by people whose first language was English.
Oh, so it's the non-English instead of the we grabbed the janitor to do the lines type thing.
Which is a little bit awkward when the characters are supposed to primarily be from New England.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that there's a lot of there are a lot of characters of what New England accents are here.
They didn't go out of their way to hire some voice actors from Boston.
Boston.
Probably not. Though I'm not looking at the full IMDb thing here. It's like the point is it's a European game.
Mm-hmm.
So so.
God, could you imagine trying to do a Boston accent in like German or something like that?
Yeah, accents don't translate well.
I know.
Right. But anyway, as far as the music goes, well, it's what you'd expect from a survival horror game.
A lot of ambience, occasional scary, ominous.
Yeah.
Atonal.
Yeah, like a lot of moans, creaks, and the like. It's about what you'd expect from a horror title. Pricing. So, this game is currently going for $45. And the question is that worth it? That's kind of a hard one to answer, because I honestly think it isn't. But it's, on the other hand, I also understand that this isn't an indie production that was done for a couple $1 million. This is mid-level game development, for a lack of a better term. So it's got much higher production values, and thus the price is going to reflect that. That being said, along higher end gaming prices, this is actually budget range.
Yeah.
Budget range is $40 to $45. So along those lines, it qualifies as a purchase. It's just, I just couldn't get over how fucking similar it was to Amnesia.
Yeah. And it's this is definitely one of those, part of the price is because it's using Unreal. In the end of the day, Call Cthulhu-based stuff is still kind of niche, so they need to put up a little higher to pay for the royalties.
Among other things. It's definitely reflected in its price, but honestly, if I were to recommend something, I would only recommend this if you aren't very familiar with the indie horror scene as it exists right now. Otherwise, pick up one of the Outlast games, Amnesia. Hell, pick up Cornerium. That is a Lovecraftian game we reviewed last year. Much cheaper. Yeah, it doesn't have quite the production values this does, but you'll be getting a more focused Lovecraftian experience, because that is all about Into the Mountains of Madness. And if you are not familiar with that, well, you can go read it up. I believe Lovecraft's in the public domain by now.
Most, if not all
of his
it,
stuff is, I think, yeah. Which a lot of the Lovecraft mythos is not actually Lovecraft himself.
Well, yeah.
But yeah.
That's why the word Lovecraftian exists. But, that's a debate for another day.
Yeah.
No. Anyway, final score, a 6. It's all right. It's solid. It's just, I could not get over the bugs. I wanted to complete the game, but I had to end about chapter 8 because the game kept crashing on me. And
check it out on sale, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, and I guess if you have an Intel GPU or whatever, just stay away.
It's not necessarily a laptop issue. It's an issue with it's an issue with the game itself. The game just isn't all that well put together. Yeah.
Fair enough.
And anyway, that'll about do it for Call of Cthulhu here. Be sure to stay tuned. This is the real title. We'll be reviewing Love next.